leaders make mistakes. You make mistakes, I make mistakes. We all do something wrong from time to time. Of course, we try to prevent that. However, we all make mistakes. There's no question about that. The question is now what to do with it, because when you just try to get away with it, that, of course, is not the best option. So let's assume there's an error in your organization and some leader did something wrong, maybe even did something really wrong where you say, well, I think we need to look into that. And by the way, if you do that, you are already doing better than most organizations, because in many organizations, people can get away with quite something. And that is one of the first issues when we look at the situation in which we are now. Often organizations hope, or of course you can hope that, but they say leadership has to work without errors, and that is never going to happen. Any kind of conflict is seen as a weakness. So people say, oh, there's a conflict in department XYZ. That doesn't shed a great light on the leader, does it? So what's going on there? Why is it all so noisy? And there is strong scientific evidence that conflicts often can lead to great results, often product ideas, innovation, changes, new processes, new products, everything based on a conflict in the first place. And now you have to say, why do you think that anyone should work without conflict? Well, because most people don't like to deal with them. And here we have the next problem. When unacceptable behavior, especially unacceptable behavior by leaders, is accepted, and especially when it is not sanctioned, then it gets more and more serious. And we had quite numerous scandals. We had a scandal in Germany with Axel Springer, one of the largest publishers, that one of their senior editors was laid off for unacceptable behavior to employees. And when you look at what the New York Times researched there and made public, they said in the US, you would have been fired for 1/10 of that behavior. And still, for years and years, the German company, I don't want to say covered it up, but at least they didn't do anything about it, although it was pretty much around that something is going deeply wrong and really wrong in the organization. And when you see that there's no moderation, no addressing, no word from the top leadership level, because they say, look, I'm a top leader here. I have so many tasks on the table. Just leave me alone. I only want to see results. When this is your approach, you have a deeply rooted leadership problem from top to bottom, because of course now we have to look at how to do it better. So first, you need management commitment for absolutely any major project or any major endeavor, any major steps you want to implement. When you have leaders who simply say, look, this is your job, this is your task, leave me alone, I only want to see the results. Could you please only contact me about the results? No, that is not possible. It never was, and it never will be, because this is not what leadership is. Leadership means that you deal with the good sides and the bad sides of the job, that you deal with all the tasks. And of course, the higher on the hierarchical pyramid you are, the more you have to face that there are actually situations which are quite complex and complicated and might even be annoying for you. That is your job. No management commitment means no leadership. As soon as you think you can only sit there, get a report at the end, and then you take a pen and you either make a green mark, a yellow mark, and a red mark on it with some highlighting pen. And then you say green is great, yellow is, sort of okay, and red means consequences. That has nothing to do with leadership whatsoever. Leadership by numbers is not leadership. So, of course, when you see that something goes wrong, there has to be a bonus malus system. Bonus means that you get something in your favor, and malus means that you have something which is held against you. And by the way, if you now say, oh, that is totally new, it's actually not. When you look at how you raise children, you always say when they behave well, they get something in return. And when they don't, there are consequences. Same applies to school, high school, college, university, trainee programs. It happens on all levels. And suddenly you're a leader and gone. So it's obvious that this cannot be the right approach. So you need a system in place where in the first place you say, what do you expect from your leaders? Because you cannot tell them this was great or this was bad when they don't know what is expected for them. And only setting the right horizon of expectations, managing expectations actually, is quite challenging for many organizations, as we see. And it is very important that you now have to look at what should we do here, sit down, and then structurally document it. Structured approach, documented approach. If you don't do that, there's an immediate negative effect. And The negative effect might be, and of course, people might walk off, the employee turnover you heard of. However, that does not necessarily have to be the only effect. The effect can be that people actually stay. And these people stay, but not for the reason you like them to stay. They stay because they say, well, it's just a short commute, or they have a flexible work offer, so they leave me in peace, or the pay is quite okay, or they simply say, look, it's 2 to 4 hours per week of dealing with that annoying leader. I just can make this bearable. I make this bearable, and afterwards I just keep on moving, and I don't do anything of what they say, because I pretend I do, and I say, yes, you're so amazing, and then they just leave me alone. And that happens quite frequently. I'm now in New York City right now. Every year, of course, not during the pandemic, but every year I go to New York City for ongoing training and education. The employee turnover you have here is unprecedented, because many people now see after the pandemic, well, I thought about my life and I came to the conclusion, maybe I don't want to make the situation bearable again. Maybe I just work somewhere else. And they find out there are other organizations, and they find out other organizations are doing much better. And that is why they work for them. So when you, of course, face leadership issues or leadership problems, you try to keep them internal and try to work through them. However, if you have significant issues on top leadership level, so many people will be involved that no one can have a neutral look at it. It is simply impossible. And that is why when it goes to the highest level of leadership, you often need an external investigation. That also happened with Axel Springer in this case. And you have to openly deal with it and openly communicate it. And in that case of Axel Springer, the law firm, I think it was Linklaters, recommended that the senior chief editor has to be removed immediately. And that is a rare case that they are that crystal clear with having a recommendation. It is very important that you deal with your leadership issues, because if you do not, the negative effect will cost you. And I know I have to come up with that point, because that is the point where management moves. When you deal with negative leadership in a way that you accept it or you cover it up, it will cost you so much money that there's no chance that in the mid run or even long run, your organization will be profitable or successful on the market. You will be overtaken left, right, and center by absolutely anyone, because people now realized that you don't have to look at your region or where you live, and maybe your region isn't that great and there aren't many jobs around. People now know every organization with an internet access can be my next employer. And that is the competition you face right now. So it is very important that you deal with it right now, and you start with it right now. I can tell you, because we always have the same chain of events. It starts somewhere in the US, it gets to the UK, and then it comes to Europe. So very soon we will face the same wave of resignation. We're already facing it, but believe me, what you see here in the US is beyond belief when you look in organization. Employee turnovers of 10, 15%, which are very hard to handle. And the loss of knowledge is incredible. And especially then you realize when you don't have a knowledge management in place, it is now important that you deal with it and that you deal with it properly. Of course, I have a lot more to offer on that. Just go to expert.nb-networks.com, put in your email address there, and then you get a weekly email every Wednesday morning. You get all aspects, all different publications I did during the week for free. Free access only via that means. So go to expert.nb-networks.com and we take it from there. If you now have specific questions where you say, hey, Niels, can we just talk? Yeah, of course, we can talk. And can we talk confidentially? Everything we talk about is confidential. Just drop me an email to nb@nb-networks.com, and then we have a chat. Of course, when you say, hey, I actually have something very specific I'd like to talk about. We need someone for training, speaking, coaching, consulting, or a mentoring program, or we need someone a bit more long-term, project interim management, or hey, we have an event, can you host, run that, or help us with it? Yes, of course. Just drop me an email, but we can just have a chat as well. nb@nb-networks.com. I'm looking forward to speaking with you. The most important aspect right now is that you apply what you heard in this podcast, because only when you apply the knowledge, you will see the change happen that you want to see in your organization. I wish you all the best doing so. Best wishes and greetings from New York City. And at the end of this, there's only one thing for me left to say, and you know what's coming now. Thank you very much for your time.